Kyandrea Cook. Kyandrea Cook thought she had life figured out. By day she was just another high school student, blending in with her peers. By night, however, she fancied herself a criminal mastermind, a dangerous double life that would soon collapse around her. It all began in March 2017 with what she thought was a foolproof plan. Using the Meet Me app, Cook lured 28-year-old Perry Nita from Palm Coast with the promises of sex and marijuana, a classic setup designed to reel him in. Nita, wary but still tempted, brought along his friend, Emmanuel Manny Purcell, for backup. When the men arrived and got into Nita's truck, the trap was sprung. Cook's boyfriend, Kendrick Bass, suddenly leapt into the back seat wearing a ski mask and brandishing a gun. Chaos erupted. Purcell, refusing to go down without a fight, lunged at Bass, but in the struggle, Bass fired 2 shots into Purcell's abdomen. Miraculously, Purcell survived the attack. You might think such a near disaster would scare Cook and Bass into disappearing. Instead, just 2 days later they were at it again, attempting yet another carjacking. But their reckless spree was short-lived. Authorities caught up with them quickly, charging both with multiple felonies. By June 2017, Cook found herself in court. She believed her attorney's reassurances that she'd avoid prison. Instead, the judge sentenced her to 20 years behind bars. Cook collapsed in tears. Her mother wailed so loudly she had to be carried out.
Indicate you guilty of all 3 charges, sentence you to 20 years in state prison.
But the story didn't end there. New attorneys stepped in, arguing that Cook's previous lawyer had mishandled her case.
She's not going to prison. She has no prior record. So, she's looking at probation or community control.
There is no doubt in my mind. I thought I was going home.
And why was there no doubt in your mind?
Because he promised me I was going home.
The court agreed, allowing her to withdraw her plea. She later entered a no-contest plea to carjacking, attempted carjacking, and aggravated battery. In April 2018, Cook's fate was sealed once again. 11 years in prison, followed by 20 years probation. The deal required her cooperation against Bass, and saddled her with the responsibility of paying restitution. Unlike Cook, the next teen in this story wasn't the aggressor. She was the victim, forced to stare down the man accused of murdering her father in open court. Tashiya Campbell. The courtroom scene on June 27, 2019, was tense, but nothing could have prepared anyone for what happened when 15-year-old Tashiya Campbell's grief boiled over. This wasn't just anger, it was volcanic rage, the kind that only comes from loss so deep it eats away at your soul. And the focus of that fury was Tevin Merriweather, the man accused of gunning down her father, James Pierce. As Merriweather entered the courtroom, Tashiya snapped. In a blur of emotion, she lunged at him, her grief taking physical form. Officers rushed to restrain her before she could make contact, quickly escorting her from the room. But the truth hung heavy in the silence that followed. No one in that courtroom could really blame her. When Tashiya later spoke to reporters, her words were soaked in anguish, the kind of pain that doesn't fade. "He took my daddy," she said, voice trembling, each syllable a wound reopening.
He was very understanding of me. Like you can go to your friends and talk about stuff you wouldn't tell your parents, but it was him. I could go to him, talk to him about stuff. He was very, very understanding and real with me.
Her outburst wasn't just teenage rebellion, it was a daughter crushed under the weight of justice delayed. The tragedy itself had begun on what seemed like a typical Saturday. Pierce was helping a woman mow her lawn, just a neighborly favor, before stopping by a Shell station. That's where he crossed paths with Merriweather. Pierce believed Merriweather had scammed him, and tempers flared. He threw the first punch outside the store, but what followed escalated far beyond fists. Merriweather opened fire, more than 20 rounds. One witness counted at least 17 shots, and investigators later confirmed 22 shell casings littered the scene. Yet Merriweather's defense painted this as self-defense, as if a single punch somehow justified unloading a barrage of bullets. It was a legal argument that sounded more like mockery than justice. And while the jury wrestled with facts and testimony, Pierce's children were left wrestling with absence. For Tashiya, no courtroom verdict could fill that void. The next case takes us to another heartbreaking story, a 13-year-old who turned a weapon on his mother's boyfriend. Kahan Mann. In January 2010, tragedy struck a quiet Kentwood, Michigan neighborhood when 13-year-old Kahan Mann was accused of fatally shooting his mother's boyfriend, Jermel Stokes. According to court documents, Kahan had confided in a friend just days before the incident, showing him a 9mm handgun and admitting that he wanted to use it against Stokes. His reasoning was chilling yet rooted in desperation. He claimed Stokes had been abusing his mother. On January 25, 2010, the situation spiraled out of control. While Stokes sat at his laptop scrolling through Facebook, Kahan approached him from behind and fired a single fatal shot to the back of his head. In the immediate aftermath, the boy tried to mislead investigators, insisting that an intruder had broken into the home and killed Stokes. But under pressure, Kahan later confessed, acknowledging he had pulled the trigger himself. By June 2010, Kahan accepted responsibility and pleaded guilty to second-degree murder. His punishment reflected both his crime and his youth. He was sentenced to remain in a juvenile facility until his 21st birthday. Yet even the sentencing hearing highlighted the deep tensions surrounding the case.
That was his only way out. He didn't know no other way out. He was a young 13-year-old kid. He just turned 13. That's his only.
His mother, Lakeisha, insisted no one truly understood what her son had endured. A man in the courtroom audience erupted in anger at her remarks, sparking a heated confrontation that nearly escalated into a fight before deputies intervened.
Obviously, after it all comes out, he was treated in ways that I had no clue of. So we can't say that, oh, he was never mistreated. He was never mistreated. Nobody.
If there was any abuse, didn't nobody know it. And that kind of secret do not stay in a closet like that. Up himself. I couldn't take it no more. I'm hurting bad enough as it is, and then not to express yourself when you're hearing things that's not correct.
It wasn't I was trying to show a scene and disrespect the court or anything but I'm going through a lot too, and I was just being there for my sister and my nephew, so that's why I kind of reacted like the way I did.
Kahan was placed at the Muskegon River Youth Home, more than 100 miles from Grand Rapids, where he faced up to 8 years of confinement. His future hinged on his behavior. With progress he could leave at 21, but setbacks could mean transfer to adult prison for decades. By 2013, signs of change began to emerge. Staff at the facility reported that Kahan, now 16, was making significant improvements, particularly in managing his anger and emotions. With the consistent support of his mother and grandmother, he began therapy and educational programs. His attorney, Fred Johnson, even requested that he be moved to a less restrictive part of the facility. However, prosecutors blocked the request, citing the strict plea deal that kept him in secure custody. Despite these challenges, Kahan expressed remorse and a desire to turn his life around. His lawyer emphasized that the young man was showing genuine signs of reform. When his 21st birthday arrived in December 2017, Judge Daniel Zamitis reviewed his progress and approved his release, acknowledging his positive transformation. By then, Kahan had already begun taking online courses at Mid-Michigan Community College and expressed ambitions to continue his education at Grand Rapids Community College. In a remarkable moment of reconciliation, he also met peacefully with Stokes' father, seeking to bring some measure of closure to the pain caused years earlier. Kahan's story is a haunting reminder of how youth, violence, and desperation can intersect, and how even in the darkest circumstances, there remains a possibility for growth and redemption. At just 14 years old, the next case involves someone only a year older than Kahan when he committed an even more shocking act, the killing of his 8-year-old neighbor. Joshua Phillips. Joshua Phillips was only 14 years old when he made a decision so horrific it would define the rest of his life. On November 3, 1998, he was outside playing baseball with his 8-year-old neighbor, Madeline Clifton, a cheerful little girl who often came by to play. What began as an innocent afternoon took a tragic turn when the ball accidentally struck Madeline in the eye. Startled and in pain, Madeline began to cry. For most kids, this would have been a moment of apology and reassurance. But for Joshua, fear took over. His father was known for his explosive temper, and the idea of him discovering the accident filled Joshua with terror. Desperate to keep Madeline quiet, he dragged her inside his home. But her cries wouldn't stop. In a state of blind panic, Joshua struck her with a baseball bat. At that point, reason should have broken through the fear. Instead, panic consumed him further. He shoved Madeline under his bed, clinging to the impossible hope that the problem might just disappear. Hours later, when he realized she was still alive, groaning beneath the mattress, Joshua made an even darker choice. Rather than call for help, he silenced her forever, cutting her throat and stabbing her 7 times with a knife. Madeline's disappearance sparked an immediate search across the neighborhood. Her parents, friends, and even Joshua himself joined the search, pretending to know nothing. For a full week, her body remained hidden in the most unimaginable place, beneath the bed in Joshua's room. On November 10, Joshua's mother made the discovery no parent should ever face. She found Madeline's body and called the police at once. Joshua was arrested at school later that day and quickly confessed. The trial was swift and merciless. Lasting only 2 days, the defense presented no witnesses. After just over 2 hours of deliberation, the jury convicted Joshua of first-degree murder. He was tried as an adult and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole.
That on Judgment Day, you, Joshua Earl Patrick Phillips, will be given a far harsher sentence than I can impose. Until that day, it is the sentence of this court that you be delivered by the sheriff of Polk County into the custody of the Department of Corrections of the state of Florida to be confined in prison without the benefit of parole for the rest of your natural life.
His father raged at the verdict, but the decision stood.
For the state to prosecute a 14-year-old for first-degree murder is ludicrous and obscene. Mr. Shorstein and Mr. Plockton should be ashamed of themselves in this matter. Their actions were carefully plotted for the press to further their own political gains.
There is no one on this earth who was more shocked at the discovery in his bedroom than I. There are no words to describe what I felt that morning. And I stand here still with reasonable doubt in my heart that Josh even did what he was convicted of. I have no doubt in regard to the brain lesions, but I do have reasonable doubt in that I have never in 15 plus years ever seen Josh violent towards another living being.
I wanted desperately to see Maddie before she was buried. The funeral home director said too much time had passed, that I did not want to remember Maddie that way. I could not say goodbye to her. I could not kiss her or hold her.
Since then, Joshua Phillips has spent his life behind bars at Cross City Correctional Institution. And shockingly, he wasn't even the youngest child in the U.S. to face such a sentence. That tragic title belongs to someone even younger, just 13 years old. Lionel Tate. Lionel Alexander Tate was just a boy, 13 years old when he etched his name into history for all the wrong reasons. His case shocked America not just because of what happened, but because of the uneasy questions it raised about justice, childhood, and accountability. It all began on July 28, 1999 in Broward County, Florida. Tate, then only 12, was left at home with his 6-year-old cousin, Tiffany Unick, while his mother babysat her. The kids were playing, laughing, and mimicking the high-energy moves they had seen on wrestling shows. But fun turned into tragedy within minutes. Tate's mother, hearing the commotion, shouted at them to quiet down. By the time she checked again, the unthinkable had already happened. Tate came running, panicked, telling her Tiffany wasn't breathing. What doctors later uncovered was horrifying. Tiffany's injuries were so catastrophic they were compared to the trauma of falling from a 3-story building. The brutality of it all led the judge to describe Tate's actions as cold and cruel. And in 2001, still just a teenager, Lionel Tate became the youngest American ever sentenced to life in prison without parole. But the case never sat comfortably with the public, or even the prosecution.
Throwing him in jail for the rest of his life is not helping him. It's not helping society. It's certainly not helping, Tiffany Unick.
I realized that Tiffany Unick had justice, but I made no secret by the fact that I found life in prison with no parole inappropriate as a sentence.
The statute said simply, a conviction for murder in the first degree is a mandatory life sentence. I had no options but to follow the law and sentence Lionel Tate to what the law dictated.
Critics argued that Tate, a child, couldn't fully comprehend the magnitude of what he had done.
We come to do what is necessary to lead to justice for Lionel Tate and justice for the juvenile justice system.
In 2004, an appeals court overturned his conviction, giving him a second chance. He walked out on house arrest and probation, a fragile kind of freedom. Unfortunately, Tate couldn't hold on to it. In 2005, he threatened a pizza delivery driver with a gun. A year later, he accepted a plea deal that earned him 30 years for violating probation. Then, in 2008, he pled guilty to robbery and had another 10 years stacked onto his sentence. Today, he sits in Florida's Hamilton Correctional Institution Annex, serving what has become the bulk of his life behind bars. Tate's story is more than just one boy's downfall. It's a haunting reminder of how quickly one decision can spiral into a lifetime of consequences. Mistakes don't have to define us forever, but refusing to grow from them almost always does. Because the past can't be rewritten, but the future? That's still a page waiting to be turned.